what happens to people who can't say no? They get taken advantage of, right? And that's the first negative, is if you say yes to everything, then people who take advantage and prey on other people are going to prey on you. And Carl's got this friend who is just like a leech. And so when he discovers that Carl can't say no to anything, every time they go out, he gets Carl to pick up the tab. And he asks Carl if he can move into his apartment rent-free. And so Carl says yes to that. And then he starts asking Carl to do his laundry. And Carl's doing that. So saying yes to everything will lead to a lack of personal boundaries, and you'll get taken advantage of. Number 2, what about all the moral issues? What if someone asks you to say yes to something that is clearly in violation of the law? In the movie, Carl's friend from high school takes a brick, and he asks Carl if he wants to throw it into the bank window. And Carl's like, no, and he says, well, I do. And he takes the brick and he chucks it through the window. The alarm goes off, the security guards go haywire. And in an instance like that, I would hope that you would say no, not only because there are consequences for breaking the law, but equally, in fact, more important, because God would have us say no in a situation like that. I want to read from Romans chapter 13, verse 5. It says this: therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also because of conscience. We have another gift from God as people created in His image, and that is a conscience. And that brings us to the third negative of saying yes all the time. And that's, what if someone asks you to say yes to something that just rubs against your conscience? You know what I'm talking about. We've all had it. I hope you say no. You should say no. Just a chapter later in Romans 14 verse 5, it warns us not to do things that rub against our conscience. Because if you do that too often, your conscience it's going to get dull. It's like listening to music just with a headset cranked to the absolute highest decibel level. Eventually, your hearing is going to get impaired. And if you say no to things that rub your conscience the wrong way, then eventually your conscience is going to get dim. And it's not going to function the way God would have it. And that's another way that when we compromise like that, when something goes against our conscience, but we do it anyway, that dehumanizes us too, if we say yes to those kinds of things. So follow your conscience. And in the movie, Carl does this at one point. Late in the movie, his former wife is in a compromised position. She's weak and vulnerable, and she asks Carl to do something that goes against his conscience. And in this instance, Carl does the right thing. He says no. And he walks away. A fourth potential negative of always saying yes is this. What do you do if you can't decide? What if you don't, if you're conflicted, if you're confused as to what the right thing to do is? I think in situations like that, you shouldn't say yes, at least not immediately. I mean, there are a number of things you could do. You could make a list of pros and cons. I'll often do that in leadership. Just draft a list of pros and cons, write down a page, and just write down everything that I can think of. Another thing that I'll do if I'm confused is I'll consult trusted friends or mentors. But one thing I hope you do, one thing that I do, is pray. James chapter 1 verse 5 says this. It doesn't just say this, it gives us this invitation. If any of you lacks wisdom, if you're conflicted, if you're confused, if you don't know whether to say yes or no, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So, if you're conflicted, go to God in prayer. Well, you can see that saying yes to everything isn't the way to go either. Unfortunately, Carl has to discover this the hard way. We're in the next clip.
No, that's not the point. Well, maybe at first it is, but that's just to open you up to it, to get you started. Then you're saying yes, not because you have to, not because the covenant tells you to, but because you know in your heart that you want to.
Yeah. You're right. That makes perfect sense.
Well, I told you, I said that.
You didn't say that.
I did say that.
You didn't say it like that.
Well, I didn't say it with an accent, but I said
No,
it.
Hey, it's Terrence. Sorry about the car. And your head there. What time is it?
It's 5:40 in the morning.
Perfect.
Our problem in North America isn't that we can't say yes. but that too often we say yes to the wrong things and no to the right things. Let me repeat that. Too often we say yes to the wrong things and no to the right things. We have an easy time, for instance, saying yes to things that we can identify will benefit us individually or provide us with instant gratification. We have an easy time saying yes to things that will benefit our nuclear family, our spouse, or our children, and then beyond the bounds of that, it gets a little more difficult. Pick up the newspaper and you'll see real-life results of what happens when people can't say no. Foreclosure rates over the last year have been soaring. Loan defaults are at record highs, as are government bailouts. And these are all the byproduct of consumers who can't say no. That's why we're in this mess right now, largely. Almost exclusively. It's because of consumers who can't say no. And most of us, on the flip side, find it far more difficult to say yes to things that won't benefit us directly. Maybe not at all. Most of us have a more difficult time saying yes to the things that will benefit other people outside of our families, like maybe in our community or overseas. And most of us have a tougher time saying yes to things that require delayed gratification, where we'll have to wait to see whether it will return to us in a good way. And that's just the truth. We say yes too often to the things that we should say no to, and we say no too often to the things that we need to say yes to. And so my challenge this morning, River City, is that all of us make a habit of saying yes more often to the right things and no more often to the wrong things. Become a yes man, become a yes woman when it comes to doing something that will benefit someone other than you or your nuclear family. Invest in an entrepreneur in a developing country by giving to Kiva, and the website will be up there. If you have questions about that, I'm sponsoring someone through Kiva. My kids are saving up to sponsor through Kiva. It's an incredible organization where you can do microloans to people that banks wouldn't even think twice of. And the money actually comes back to you and you can reinvest it. But that's a way of giving beyond yourself. Number 2, start saving now for our special Christmas offering. If you're part of River City, you know that each year we have a special collection for people in Africa, people who are poor or suffering. We've done it through World Vision, we've done it through Christian Reformed World Relief Committee and so forth, and we're going to do it again this year. Start saving now. I mean, Christmas is going to come quicker than you think. And put a little bit aside each week. Maybe just put all of your loose change into a special container for that Christmas offering. And that's another way that you can benefit someone other than yourself. In our own community, serve a meal at the Bridges Shelter. Or talk to someone on staff there. We have members of the Bridges Shelter staff who go to our church. Talk to them about what you can do, what your home group can do. One of the best ways that I can think of doing something good that will benefit others outside of you or your nuclear family is to start serving at River City Church. As I look out this morning, I know that not all of you are serving. Maybe 60% of you are serving. And I know a lot of you are newer to this church, but there is a place for you on this team. And it doesn't matter whether you're a certain age. We've got space for young children. We've got space for grandparents. It doesn't matter if you've got experience volunteering or if you've never volunteered anywhere in your life. There's room for you on the team. In a couple of weeks, I'll be going to the classic CFL game in Hamilton between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Toronto Argonauts. It's like the Labor Day Classic. And the ticket to this game was expensive. It wasn't cheap. I mean, I'm Dutch, so if it's more than a movie, that's expensive for me, okay? And this was a bunch of movies, okay? Now, before football players make any play, they huddle, right? They form a circle around the quarterback, and they discuss the play so that everybody's on the same page. Now, do you think that I or anyone else would be willing to pay that huge ticket price to watch professional football players huddle for 2.5 hours?